subtracting them, all that good stuff. So in number 1, we are adding the polynomials together. Really don't even need parentheses here. We're just adding a bunch of stuff, and then oops, this 5 is negative. If you want to add the opposite there, you can. It's a negative 5. So from here, we're just going to combine like terms. Again, you can ignore the parentheses in this one situation. So I'm going to combine the x squareds with the x squareds. We have 1x squared and 1x squared. Add the coefficients together. That gives you 2x squared. This x right here that I put a dot underneath doesn't have an x anywhere else. We cannot combine x squareds with x's. So this x has nothing else to combine with, and we also don't combine it with numbers either. So there we are. I just brought that 2x down. And then we have 3 and negative 5. You can add 3 and negative 5. You've been doing that for quite some time. Adding numbers together, you get negative 2. Bada bing, bada boom. Now here we are subtracting. So here's where the parentheses matter. We are subtracting off this entire set of terms right here, which means we're taking x squared away from 3x, away from negative 2x squared. We got to find they're the same term. So what I'd encourage you to do is add the opposite. We keep this first polynomial the way it is. We change the subtraction to addition, and that makes all of these, in this case, become negative, but in general, the opposite of whatever they are. So these are all now negatives. So now we go about adding like terms. Now there is no term, x to the third or x cubed term, to combine with this one right here, which is kind of sad. But then it's like, well, hey, this makes the math easier for me, so that's at least a silver lining. Doesn't have a partner to add with, but it makes your math job easier. Whereas this negative 2x squared there, and it is a negative 2, see that? And if you need to, add the opposite, shove that negative right next to the 2 so we don't forget it. This negative 2x squared gets combined with this negative 1x squared. A negative 2 and a negative 1 is a negative 3x squared. I bring that ending, that like term ending with it. Here I have a 1x. I'm going to combine that with negative 2x. That's negative 1x. And maybe you want to cross out the stuff that you've already dealt with. I've dealt with the x's and the x squareds and the x to the thirds. Now I have negative 1 and negative 3. That's negative 4. Crossing things out, just when there's a lot of terms, it helps you see that you've taken care of everything. Let's try that again. See, here we have this polynomial, and we are subtracting off this polynomial right here, which really means this 2x is going to get taken away from the 4x squared. So I'd recommend that you make that a negative. But when you do that, you have to change this to a plus sign. And also, folks, let me actually take that away for just a second. If you already made that mark, that's fine. That's because this is negative. And then we're going to be subtracting a negative 5x from this. Remember, when we subtract a negative, that's the same as adding a positive. And when we subtract a negative 1 off, that's the same as adding a negative. So did you see every time when I made these marks in the side of the second parentheses, I was chopping this to make it a plus sign? So again, we add, and then we made all of these opposite. The positive went to a negative, the negative went to a positive, and the positive went to a negative. And now we go about our combining like terms. So that gives you 2x squared. Combine the x's. That gives you 1x and 5x is 6x. And then negative 3 and negative 1 is negative 4. That was pretty fun. Now we are adding in number 4 the polynomials together. When we add, just like number 1, we don't have to. We can just drop the parentheses. We don't need them. We're just putting all these terms together. Now this 2x term is negative, and this term is negative, but the 3x is positive. We're just combining things together here. So we have positive 3x. We have positive 4x to the third and positive 3x to the third. So let's add your coefficients together, 7x to the third. Boom. No x squared term here, but let's look for one. There is an x squared term right there, so we have negative 3x squared. Done with that. Look for x's. Oh, there's an x right there. It doesn't have anything to partner with. That's sad, but it makes the math easier. Just bring it down. And here is a 1. Nothing to partner with, which is sad, but it makes your life easier. Bring it down. No math to do. Just writing it or copying it down. There we are. Let's try some multiplication. Multiplication, you multiply the coefficients together and add the exponents. So I'm multiplying 2 times 1, which is 2, and I'm adding the exponents together. So it's x to the 2 plus 1 is 3. And then also distribute there. So 2 times 3 is positive 6, and the x squared comes along. Let's multiply here. So we have a 1x to the 1 power. Multiply the coefficients. 1 times 3 is 3. It's going to be x to the, add the powers together, third. Here I have 1x times negative 1x. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. And then add your powers together. 1 plus 1 is 2, so x to the 2. Last but not least, multiply 1x times 5. That'd be 5x. Excuse me. Number 7, we are distributing the 3x to the x. Again, multiply the coefficients together, that gives you 3. And then add the exponents together. That's going to be x to the 1 times x to the 1. 1 and 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Here we have negative 4 times 3x. So that's a negative 12x, right? Because the 4 is negative. Negative times the positive is negative. And then when we distribute the 1 through, 1 times x is 1x. 1 times negative 4 is negative 4. But realize here we have like terms, so we can combine those. So we get 3x squared minus 11x minus 4. Beautiful. And more foiling. I'm going to go a little faster here. 6x squared negative 2x, 15x, negative 5. Combining like terms right there gives you 13x, but don't forget about your 6x squared out in front. So by the way, this is a 13x now, a positive 13x, so you put a plus sign down. And we have this negative 5 at the end, so I'll write down minus 5 there. I should have written a lot smaller. Let's undo that. Let me grab my highlighter tool, and let's pretend I wrote a whole lot smaller. Sometimes pretend comes real. Alrighty, let's distribute the x through. So now I have 3 multiplication rainbows to make, 3 multiplication steps to do with just that first x. So we get x to the third, we get 3x squared and 2x. 3x squared and 2x. Now folks, I could keep on going. I am going to keep on going and multiply a negative 3 to each of these things. And I could put those 3 things right here where I'm making those 3 green dots. Or you could do something a little different here. So I'm going to take negative 3 times x squared, which is negative 3x squared. And I could put it underneath the positive 3x squared because they're like terms, and I'm going to end up combining them if you want to do that. Otherwise, again, like I said, make a straight line. Now I get negative 3 times 3x, which is negative 9x. Now I'm going to combine that with the positive 2x. So I put that underneath so I can add them and combine them. And last but not least, negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Well, I don't have anything to combine from these red terms. I have no constants. So now, whether you have them the way I have organized, or maybe you have them all in a straight line like this, no, I can't do that very quickly. Your next step is to combine like terms. So again, it could look like this, and then you have to find your like terms, which isn't a big deal, or you put them on top of each other, and then when you combine like terms, it just looks a little neater, and it's easier for you to just focus on the math versus searching out the like terms. So that x to the third didn't have a partner. 3x squared minus 3x squared is 0x squared, which we don't actually need to write down. And then we get negative 7x and negative 6. There we are. Here we get x to the third for number 10. Negative 5x squared, positive 2x squared, and negative 10x. Now here there's nothing to combine, no like terms, but we should put it in standard form. So that 2x squared has to sneak in front of the negative 5x. Ooh, I do have like terms. Just kidding. I can combine negative 5x and negative 10x. That's negative 15x. That was fun. Last couple here. You're going to get x squared, negative 9x, positive 9x, and negative 81. When you combine like terms, those become 0x, which you don't need to write down, so you just get that. Number 12, the trick is, remember 5 squared means 5 times 5. 4x plus 3 squared means 4x plus 3 times 4x plus 3. Do not confuse this with sprinkling. With sprinkling, you didn't have any plus or minus signs there. If the exponent was 2 here, you could sprinkle that to each of these factors. It's totally different than when you have more than one term in the parentheses. So this is how you do it. You get 16x squared, 12x, 12x, and 9, which when you combine like terms gives you a 24x in the middle, but don't forget your 16x squared in front and your positive 9 in the back. Doesn't look very pretty. Let me fix that. There we are. Now for number 13 here, I should have wrote smaller. Now we have 3x minus 8 times itself how many times? Not 2, but 3. Now when you do that, 3x minus 8, just multiply one binomial with another binomial initially. So there is no fast way of doing this. You just take it one multiplication step at a time. The first binomial times the second binomial. So I get 9x squared minus 24x minus 24x positive 64. And that's all going to get multiplied with 3x minus 8. Of course, we should combine like terms. So we actually get 9x squared minus 48x plus 64. And now we're multiplying it with 3x minus 8. So now we get 27 x to the third. We get negative, it's going to be 144 x squared and 192x. That's when I multiply 3x with all of those. Notice I had an x with this, so all of these three terms should increase their x power by 1 because I have to add 1 to the powers because that's 3x to the 1, and that happened. Oftentimes we forget about that x because we're doing all this other calculation. So when you do a step like that, double check and make sure that you didn't leave that off because it makes everything else really frustrating. It's worth the 10 seconds to double check. Now multiply negative 8 by everything, which means that when I'm multiplying by a negative, the signs in front of these terms to the left should become opposites. This is now going to become a negative 72x squared. And I'll put that underneath the x squared term because I like doing that process. It organizes things and makes the combining like terms easier for me. Negative 8 times negative 48 is going to be a positive. I'm going to put a plus sign down right now. Well, 8 times 50 is 400. So then take away 16. That's going to be 386x. And then negative 8 times 64. 8 times 60 is 480. Add, and it's a negative. That's negative 480. Add 32 to that. So I think that's negative 512. So combine like terms. There's nothing to combine with the x to the third. Combine the x squareds. You get negative 216x squared. Combine the x's. You get 576x. 576x, and bring in the negative 512, and there's our final answer. Boom.